In finem delexit eos. These are the words that Bishop Estevez chose as his episcopal motto. Words translated, he loved them to the end. It is a motto that focuses its attention very directly to Jesus Christ, because it is his love that extends to the end. It describes what Jesus accomplished during his life on earth, carrying that love to the end that was not only the cross, but to the resurrection and new life. And because of that moment of ending in his human existence, well then the love of God that continues to the end exists now for us, and it is the reason that we gather. We focus our attention always on this love of God that continues carrying us toward the end for which we were made. So it is a beautiful motto that focuses attention appropriately on the person of Jesus, the reason for the ministry of any bishop. But I think this motto also explains the aspiration of Bishop Estevez to point to Jesus, but then to carry out his ministry in imitation of Jesus. To honor a man of the church on his 80th birthday, this points to a long and faithful service. But we know that his efforts have been focused on this same ministry of Jesus, to love concretely to the end. And we see that his heart was moved by every person that came into contact with him. A heart ready to hear the stories of the beloved souls entrusted to his care, to reach to the ends of the people to whom he was sent. We see it in his desire to give a voice to the vulnerable. My own first observation in arriving was to recognize the care in particular for the prisoner, to love, especially pointing to those that too often others do not love. Now, this motto comes from John's Gospel, and it tells us that when Jesus was described as loving to the end, it was at the moment of the Last Supper, a moment in which he knew that his end on earth was now very near, that the end in terms of accomplishing the work of the Father was now very near, and so he loved them to the end. In that moment of the Last Supper, it tells us that he went from that description to being fully aware of what was coming, and so he washed the feet of his apostles. Fully aware, knowing that he was there to love to the end, he demonstrated to those that he would send to carry on his love the action of washing feet, of reminding them that they must do as he has done. After that beautiful, touching moment of washing the feet of his disciples, after also entrusting them with the gift of the Eucharist around which we gather this evening, Jesus begins his passion. And after the shocking events of those days, the world awakened to a new beginning. And death gave way to life. Darkness gave way to light. The followers of Jesus that had hoped in his promise, they now began to see that his promise would be fulfilled, and yet they had to wrestle with the fact that they themselves fell short. They did not love to the end as they had promised. And so as we celebrate this birthday today, the gospel chosen for this gives the opportunity to renew the commitment to love. To say once again that despite falling short, we are able to take up again the work of love. And so in the gospel passage, we hear that moment of reckoning between Jesus and Peter. A moment in which the Lord provides for him an opportunity to fulfill what he had promised earlier, asking him 3 times, "Do you love me?" And in each occasion, as he responded, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you," he instructed him again, "Feed my sheep, take up the work of following my example, to wash the feet of those entrusted to your care." And so Peter began that ministry, a ministry in which he did love to the end, a ministry in which he then passed on the love of Jesus into the church that would carry us to this point, gathering to celebrate that love here and now for us. Bishop Estevez, I know I can speak on behalf of everyone who is here today to thank you for the ways that you have fulfilled your aspiration, the ways that you sought to love, the ways that you carried out your ministry day after day, trying to love to the end. You have made many decisions. You have faced many obstacles in trying to carry out this aspiration, in your attempt to feed the flock, to do as Jesus entrusted to those first apostles. You have searched for the lost, and you have lifted them up. You have loved as Jesus loved. As your successor, taking up that same command of Jesus, well, it has been my privilege to see the fruits of that love, to encounter people who have been lifted up, to see and hear about the stories of those who experienced the love of God in your ministry. When I was first assigned as Bishop of the Diocese of St. Augustine, there was much to learn. New people, new places, a history, not only a rich history of the church in this place, but of a more recent history of the direction that the church was going. And I was grateful that in those early days of learning about what I was to carry on, I got copies of the various pastoral letters that you wrote during your time as bishop. And so on this occasion, as we celebrate that ministry, there is one pastoral letter in particular that I want to focus on: abandoning ourselves to his hands. It was a pastoral letter written on the occasion of celebrating the great 450th anniversary, an opportunity to look at the legacy we have received, to reflect on the life of St. Augustine and on this diocese that takes him as our patron. Abandoning ourselves to his hands, this is certainly a fitting title. But as you walked back in the history of the diocese, if you held up the example of many great and faithful people who have gone before us, you asked a crucial question in this letter: where has God been in all of this journey? Where has God been in all of this journey? It is a question that also was selected as part of the program for this celebration, a quote from that pastoral letter. With this phrase, with this question where we explore where has God been, you highlighted the fact that the answer to that question is at times seen clearly, but in other occasions it is a more hidden reality, but present nonetheless. And so you used a phrase to describe the long history of God's people in this place, describing the thread of grace. The thread of grace that reveals the hand of God always present in what is happening. That thread of grace that connects us to the mysteries that we celebrate in these days of Easter. The reality of the cross giving way to the resurrection. The reality of the crosses that we must bear and the hope that comes from God's promise. The thread of grace that has woven through the history of this diocese is what brings us to every moment of celebration, in that occasion of a diocesan anniversary and in this occasion as we celebrate your birthday. It is hindsight that allows us to recognize the work of God, to see it more clearly. But the reality of what you hold up for us in this pastoral letter is that it is not only about what God has done in the past, but it is a reminder that this present moment is part of that thread of grace. This present moment offers us the opportunity to ask the question, where is God present now? In our diocese, in our own lives, in the work of feeding the flock that Jesus gives to the church. This occasion certainly calls for that look back, but it is a reminder of this grace of God very active now, in this moment. The Lord invites us to do as you titled in this letter, abandon ourselves to his hands. When we recognize him present, even in seemingly hidden ways, when we entrust ourselves to his hands, well, then that grace that is at work in our lives can thread the future of the church as he desires, so that it may, in fact, bear fruit, that we may be reminded of the love of God that will be with us to the end. Faithfulness to the end, it requires a faithfulness now. Your motto has not yet been fulfilled, because here you are. And so aspire to continue that motto, to love to the end. Bishop Estevez, we gather today to pray with you and to pray for you, that you may in fact accomplish what you set out to do. Jesus connected love for him with feeding his sheep. In many ways, you carried out that ministry. Feeding the sheep looks different according to different circumstances. The way that we must respond, that changes. But what is constant and unchanging is the love of God that undergirds it all. The love of God that continues to the end. And so our prayer is that to the end, you will love the one who first loved you.